I gotta be honest, I don't really know what I'm gonna say about this book, but I guess let's just jump right into it. I finished Girls of Paper and Fire this morning before work, and I almost finished it yesterday. I just kind of ran out of time in the evening, things got hectic. But yeah, I just finished it, and I have kind of mixed feelings about it, so I really don't know how to proceed from here. I am gonna try to keep the spoilers to a minimum, but I can't promise that there won't be absolutely any, because, like I said, I don't know what I'm gonna say yet. So yeah, I guess let's just get into it. I'm still working my way through a couple other books that I pulled out of my TBR jar, so I'm working on those. But a couple days ago, I just got in the mood to read fantasy. That's all I wanted to read. So I browsed my shelves and I have a lot of like fantasy series or like really chunky fantasy books or just things that seemed like a huge commitment and I didn't want to get into that. But I saw Girls of Paper and Fire and I'd heard really good reviews about it. I have some friends who really liked it and it seemed like the perfect pick. And I did remember that it's part of a series. This is the only one that I have. I think it's a trilogy, but I still thought that it could possibly be read on its own. And, I could decide after the fact if I wanted to continue the series, which I think I will at some point. I don't know that I will right now, mostly because I don't have the books and I'd like to read some of the books I do have. But I also haven't decided whether or not I want to just get the books from the library or actually buy them like secondhand somewhere. And part of that is because I do want to keep this copy. I think that if this were not a first edition, I wouldn't keep it. I didn't hate the story, but I'm a little bit indifferent to it, so I wouldn't keep it. But it's really pretty, and it's got this pretty, pendant on the cover. Almost dropping it, it's fine. So anyway, so I'm tempted to keep this, and I did like it. I could see myself reading again, so I think I will keep it, and I think I'll just try to get the other two books secondhand. But I am not going to do that right now. I'm not buying more books. I didn't love it quite enough to buy the next books in the series immediately. Like, I don't need to continue, I feel like. And part of that is the ending. So I guess this will have spoilers because I have to talk about the ending of this because it frustrated me to no end. Haha, funny. Anyway, okay, but let's start out without spoilers if I can, or I'll just talk about like some general things. I guess what struck me first was the writing because I actually kind of liked it. I'm not like the biggest writing snob, but I definitely can be. And there are definitely times that the writing of a story is what has pulled me out of it or what has made it a slow read for me. But if the writing's fairly well done, then I can race through something and, read it very quickly. And this one I did read very quickly. Like every time I sat down, it was one of those books that just kind of flew by. And I got really into it and really enjoyed just sitting for hours and just reading like 100 pages at a time if I could. So I really liked the writing. I was very pleasantly surprised by it. There are definitely times that it was a little bit frustrating or subpar or I don't know, sometimes the word choices were a little bit weird or like the way that things were phrased felt really weird and didn't make a whole lot of sense. Or like a character would say something and then somebody else, there'd be like some interiority and then they would respond and the response wouldn't really make sense. And I'm trying to think of an example, not necessarily from the book because I didn't mark any of those. I'm not going to find those. But things like, I don't know. Okay, I can't really think of an example. Maybe if I do, I'll like write one in here while I'm editing. But just like the sentences not flowing. Like it's very clear that I shouldn't say this, I can't speak for the author, but it feels like the author was writing this dialogue, decided to put this interiority, forgot exactly what had been said before, and so then wrote something that kind of made sense, but like not really. Like nobody would say that in response to what was just said. It wouldn't really make sense. So anyway, yeah, I'm blanking on examples. Anyway, there were definitely times when things stood out like that, but for the most part, it was really, really enjoyable, and I think it was well written. It was not, like there wasn't so much telling what the characters were feeling, we were shown more, and I don't know, I thought it was well done. There were definitely some inconsistencies, but overall, I enjoyed the writing. I would definitely read more of the author's books. Natasha. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name. I need to stop poking out. But yeah, I would read more of her books for the writing. So that's why I think I will eventually continue the series, because I like the writing enough. I didn't love the characters. Okay, let's get into that. And there will be spoilers when talking about the characters. So let's get into that. I have always wondered if it would be possible to write a book that's not about the main character, which on the surface, obviously you can't. Whoever is the main focus, who the story revolves around, is the main character. You're hearing their thoughts, or you're just following them and you're seeing their life. They're the main character. But what I mean by that is, could you write it like, okay, it would be like Batman and Robin. This is the first example that's coming to mind. Everything is about Batman, of course, because he's the main character, he's the superhero, Batman's the sidekick. But what if you wrote things from, did I say Batman's a sidekick? But what if you had a story from the sidekick's perspective? And I'm sure that that has been done, and usually when it's done, and I'm talking specifically about Batman and Robin. I know that like Robin has a TV series and he's got more hype. But normally when that's done, the sidekick becomes the main character and they're the one who is solving things and moving the plot along, and it becomes their story. I mean, like literally take a secondary character and write about it through their eyes while the main character is doing all of the main character things. We're just not following the main character. And I kind of saw how that could be done in Girls of Paper and Fire, because I started feeling like Lay was not the main character. And I mean, she's the main character, it's written about her, and in the end, she is the one who ends up kind of doing the thing they've been working towards. But I thought for a while that she was not going to be the one to finally, commit this final action, which I said there would be spoilers, so let's just go with it. Oh yeah, I never gave like a synopsis of the book, but that's fine. Who cares? So at some point in the book, the reader kind of figures this out, but also the main character or the other characters figure out that like the king needs to die. And basically Lay and Ren decide that. And I knew that that's what Ren was working towards. Like that's very obvious. And that's when I started to feel like Ren was the main character. Because we have Lay, who she's only here because her eyes are special, but we never really learn how they got to be that way. Or like she's just born with it and there's never any answer, which I'm hoping that there's like a more rounded and like full answer in the later books, because I still have questions. And her eyes were brought up again towards the end of the book, so I'm kind of wondering if like that's going to be a thread in the next one. But Lay is really not all that special otherwise, in my opinion. She kind of just got to be annoying to me because she is very strong-willed and, definitely doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to be doing these things. But she never really does anything that helps. And she gets out of some things by chance. She does run from the king, but like that was a really stupid move that didn't really do anything necessarily. And she's not good at anything. So I don't know, I just started to feel like she's not the main character. Whereas we have Ren, who has this big secret. She is a Jia warrior, which, excuse my pronunciation, I'm doing my best. But anyway, but she is this great warrior, and she is doing what she has to do in order to carry out this plot to kill the king. And I don't know, I just started to feel like, man, she knows what she's doing, and she's like sneaking off all the time. And it felt like, and Lay starts to see her sneaking away in the night, and it felt like we were watching the main character through someone else's eyes. So I don't think that that was the intention with this book. I think Lay is supposed to be the main character, but this was a really cool insight into how a book could be written from a secondary character's point of view, which is definitely something I've always wanted to do, and maybe I'll toy with that a little bit more after this. But yeah, Ren started to feel like the main character, and she's even the one who is supposed to kill the king in the end. And yes, Lay technically is the one who ends up stabbing him in the neck, which doesn't kill him, as we find out. That's some of what I have to rant about in the end. But like, Lay has so much help, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and she is getting her butt kicked. And has to have help from somebody else who immediately dies. And then she's like, oh, now that the king is incapacitated, I'll kill him. So I don't know. I just felt like you're not the main character. And then Ren comes in and saves the day. So to me, Ren is the main character. And I don't know. I think I would have read this book from Ren's perspective. That would have been so fun. I want to know more about her. I stopped caring about Lei, mostly because she just annoyed me. Like I said, she doesn't do a whole lot that's helpful. She causes a lot of problems. And, like, we know that she doesn't want to be here, but nobody else wants to be here either. So either figure it out or stop moaning. I don't know. She didn't get on my nerves that much, but, like, in retrospect, she did get on my nerves. So that's how I feel about our main character and then Ren. And we got here because I said that I didn't really like the characters, and that's not true. I did like some of them. I want to say Okai surprised me. I didn't really expect her to change in the ways that she did, and I kind of wish that she hadn't been redeemed at the end, because she started out as Lei's like best friend, and then she kind of hardened and grew up while they're at the palace. And I thought it would be really cool if like she actually ended up betraying them instead of Blue, who none of us liked anyway. So I thought maybe Okai was gonna betray them, or I don't know, she was gonna cause some trouble somehow. But she and Lei made up and were friends again by the end. So that was kind of, that's standard, that's what happens. But I thought it would be really cool to subvert the expectations and, take this sweet little innocent charming girl that we had at the beginning and then make her be like one of the biggest problems. Maybe she stands in the way of the king dying or something. I don't know, just food for thought. But anyway, so Okai, yeah, she surprised me, but then didn't really surprise me at the end. Oh, okay. I'm so upset. Okay, this is what upset me about the ending. So I'm gonna leave this character for a moment and talk about the plot, which I was intrigued by. I thought was cool. I definitely had some wishes that that didn't happen, but that's okay. It's not, I didn't write it. It doesn't have to be exactly what I thought. Sorry, this is combining character and plot. I wanted to like the king. When he's first introduced, there was something about his description that I just wanted to like him. He felt like a Deucalion type, Deucalion from Teen Wolf, who is one of my favorites, one of my favorite villains. And yes, he gets a redemption story, but he starts out as a villain, and I love him because he's this soft, quiet-spoken villain who knows that he's more powerful, but doesn't need to lord that in people's faces. And he's not like super duper evil, doing all these terrible things, but he is going to get what he wants, and he knows it. And so he just kind of, quietly does what he needs to do. And those were the vibes that I got from the king at first. And very quickly that was shattered, and, very quickly realized, no, we're just going to hate the king the whole time. He is terrible. He isn't going to get redemption. We don't like him. So anyway, okay, so there we go. That's the last bit I will say about characters until I continue with the plot. So anyway, within the first few pages, I started to get like the feeling that I get reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone. And I love Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I love everything about it. Absolutely everything. Like the magic system and the characters and the writing and the plot, everything. That book makes me green with envy. I wish that I had written it. I love that series so much. And I kind of felt a little bit like that reading this series, or reading this one book. I keep wanting to call it Paper Girls. Girls of Paper and Fire. I kind of got that feeling. Not to the same extent, and it didn't carry all the way through, but it made me really happy to start reading it. And part of that was the writing style was really, really pleasant, and I liked the world. I liked the magic system, or no, we don't really see much of the magic system, but I liked some things about the world. And then the plot had these varying threads throughout it that kept it going, as a plot should. But I just mean so Lei gets taken to the palace against her wishes, so you know that somehow she's going to try to escape. And then there's the matter of her mother, who got taken 7 years ago, and so that's a thread that gets picked at every once in a while. And then there's also like this pendant that everybody gets when they're born that has a special word in it that's like their fate, and they can't open it till they turn 18. So like she's almost 18, and so there's that little bit through it where you're like, okay, we're gonna find out what her word is by the end, and that'll be interesting. So I thought that was cool. But I didn't think that those threads were really carried through as well as they are by Laini Taylor in The Daughter of Smoke and Bone, because in that series, there are so many questions at the beginning. Laini Taylor sets up all of these questions, and then she keeps poking at them throughout the entire book until you finally learn a couple things, but you don't learn everything, and then there's the next book, and she has more questions, and also the same questions, and they keep getting poked out. Or they keep getting poked at. So the reader is constantly reminded of these things, but not in like a nagging way, in like the character also wants to know them, and so we want to know them, but there's other things going on, so we're not like annoyed, but it keeps you wanting to read and it keeps you interested and excited. So I just felt that in Girls of Paper and Fire, some of these questions could have been picked at a little bit more. I started to kind of forget about the pendant and the word. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that that's a thing, because Lay hasn't really cared about that for the past 100 pages. And then her mother just ended up, I guess, being dead. I don't know if somehow that comes back in later books and she's not actually dead, but for now, she's just dead. And I'm like, okay. So that was a little anticlimactic. Like, it's better than it being on the nose and cliche or something, like having her mom come back in some really huge way. So I'm not super mad at that, but it just kind of felt a little bit lackluster, I guess. But then there's the ending. So like I said, when I read this book, every time I sat down to read, I was really excited to read, and I read big chunks of it, and part of that is that like the plot just kept it going. I did really enjoy it. Some of it was a little bit boring, kind of, but like not droning in a really bad way. Like it just kind of, it wasn't action, but it was still interesting, and so I did really enjoy it. But then we get to the ending, and I kind of forgot for a minute that there were going to be other books, and I was like, we only have 10 pages left and the king is still alive. Like, what is going to happen? We have to know what happens to the world. And then I remembered, oh yeah, there are future books to figure that out. So that was fine. The pacing of that was fine. I still figured the king has to die in this one, and we have to figure out what Lay's word is in her pendant. That was really it. Like, that was all I cared about. So like I said, Lay is the one to kill the king, and then she and Ren run away, and the whole palace is in shambles, and there's fighting and whatever. And they get saved by my favorite character, Kenzo, who we only started to see in like the last 50 pages of the book. Like he'd been introduced, but just as like one of the king's guards, and you don't really see a whole lot of him. And then we started to see him, and he's really sweet, and we get to like know him a little bit. And then there's like some witty banter between him and Lay, and he just became my favorite character immediately, because that is always my favorite character, is the side character who is funny and sassy and sweet. And I don't know, Kenzo just became my absolute favorite character. Loved him, was really sad we didn't see more of him, was looking forward to seeing more of him in future books. I'm so mad about this. So Ren comes to save Lay, and then Kenzo comes to save both of them and is like, get out of here, I've got this. And he's like fighting this other character. She doesn't matter. I don't care about her. I'm like, okay. Kenzo has to win, obviously. Anyway, so the king is lying there dead. Kenzo's fighting his other bodyguard. Lay and Ren leave. Whatever. Don't care. Don't care. That's so mean. I do care, but I don't care. We go through like the whole ending. Lay finds out her word on her pendant. Then we get an epilogue. I'm so mad about this epilogue. I'm so mad for two reasons. It's like a couple let me find it. This is our epilogue. This is what we're working with. In those few paragraphs, we find out two things. One, the king is not dead, because of course he's not dead. That was the entire point of the book, and he's not dead. So that really frustrated me, because I figured like, okay, the king is gonna die, and then the next couple books will be about like figuring out how to rule the kingdom now, or who's gonna rule the kingdom, or, you know, how to like stop this war that's coming, and just figuring out what life is now, because now the whole entire land is in an uproar. So I was like, that's fine, that'll be great. But no, the king's not dead, which means that the next book is also going to be about killing the king, which we just did. So I was upset about that. But you know who is dead? You want to take a guess? Kenzo. Kenzo's dead. Because this one opens with the other guard being like, and the fox stared down at the wolf's lifeless body. Kenzo's a wolf, the other guard is a fox. I was so upset. I was so upset. Like, I know that my favorite characters tend to die, but I didn't think that Kenzo was gonna die in the last page, and when we'd barely been introduced to him. So I'm really upset about that. I don't know why Kenzo had to die, but the king gets to live. So yeah, so I'm mad about that. And I guess those are my thoughts about the book. Okay, so final thoughts to just review everything now that I've been recording for 20 minutes. The writing was good, liked the writing. I will continue the series at some point, but I was so disappointed by the ending that I'm not in a huge hurry to continue it. I'm gonna finish the books that I was reading and then figure out where to go from there. I like the characters. Characters were not bad. They felt like fleshed out and different from each other, but most of them were not my favorites. They were just kind of there, I guess. I don't know. I didn't care about most of them, except for Kenzo, who died. So that's how I feel about the characters. And then plot, like I said, it was fun. It was interesting. But then it felt kind of lackluster at the end when everything they'd been working towards just didn't matter anymore. Now for a content guide, I don't remember any swearing. So I don't think there's any swearing in it. That's nice. For like gore and violence, I would give it a solid 4, because even though there's not a lot of gore in it, there's some. And when there is gore, it's pretty detailed. So if you're kind of squeamish, be careful. Beware of this. And then, like, you know, there's a lot of fighting towards the end of it also. Lots of fighting, which I did kind of have an issue with too, because a couple of the characters take quite the beating and then they're just fine, you know? They just continue on and they keep fighting. And I'm like, you should be unconscious and your jaw should be broken and you should not be able to continue fighting. I don't know what's going on. So yeah, that was a little much. The violence went a little heavy for them to just be okay. But anyway, so there's some violence and gore for sure. Okay, and then for like spice level, I never know how to rate things for spice, because everybody's kind of different. Everybody can handle a different amount, and some people think that like a kiss is way too much, and then some people think that way too much is fine. So I think I would give it a 3, maybe a 4. It's like a high 3 for spice, I think. I don't know. It's a 3 or a 4. It's not below that, for sure. There's definitely some spice, but there's also not like a full-on scene. Like, everything cuts to black, but everything leading up to cut to black is kind of a lot. So yeah, I would say 3 or 4, if that's helpful. Okay, and I guess that those are all of my thoughts for Girls of Paper and Fire. So thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you've read this book, let me know down below. Let me know what you think of the rest of the series also. Like, should I continue it, and should I continue it soon, or can I kind of wait? I'm afraid that if I wait too long, I'll completely forget everything that happened in this book, which might be good. Maybe I'll forget about Kenzo, and then it won't hurt so much to move on. I think I'm funny. If you did like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, please. Go ahead and subscribe. I put out review videos like this every week, if I can. That's the goal, at least. And sometimes I do other things like a TBR video or a shelf tour, or I don't know, just randomly talking about random books and things. So yeah, check it out if you like booktube channels. Check out my other videos, but that's gonna do it for this one. So thank you again for watching and have a blessed day. Bye bye.